It's nice to see some familiar faces in the audience today as well. And yeah, I just saw most of you in my apartment. So I live at Nightingale Village as well in Skye House. Moved in July. And yeah, I'm really enjoying it. It's nice to share it with you all. Thanks for coming. Thanks for doing the volunteer in the country as well. So before we jump into talking about Skye House, I thought I would start by giving you a little bit of context about the wider village and some of the sort of key decisions that were made that led us to the outcome that you have just seen today, and then I'll get into some of the sort of more detailed bits about Skye House. So you're probably pretty familiar with this since you've just been walking around the village, but this is Duckett Street here, Hope Street down here, and then Deck Park up here, and then the upfield train line runs here. So Nightingale Village, as you know, is a collaboration between 7 architects and 7 sites. So it's architecture, and urban coupe on the Hope Street interface. Kennedy, Nolan, Hable, Breeze, AMA, CCA, and Willowa was our 7th architect in that site. Ended up getting sold to the council to develop Deck Park, which was a great outcome for us. It was sad to see Nightingale Wow not get realised, but hopefully in the future. So this is the context. So sort of sitting in amongst some other sort of pretty average development of 7, 8 stories as well. And we started by looking at, sort of the footprint of space that we had to develop, and then making some key moves, thinking about what did we want to contribute to Brunswick. Brunswick really needs green space, as I don't know, probably some of you live in Brunswick and would know that it can be a pretty hard space. So one of our key priorities was carving out space at the ground plane, especially in this area, sort of around Breeze Street. In Hope Street, it can be pretty harsh down there, pretty windy. We wanted to carve out some green space and cut some pedestrian thoroughfares through what was really quite a big site as well. So we started by setting our building envelopes back from the south and from the north and creating pedestrian walkthroughs between the upfield bike path and what's currently a car park, but we're lobbying council to hopefully convert this into a park. And then again here, with Evergreen and Park Life as well, looking to create a pedestrian thoroughfare there, which ended up being developed into a park, so which is a better outcome. And then looking at softening the spaces around the bike path as well. So those of you that have ridden on the upfield bike path probably know it can be pretty hectic at rush hour. It's like lots of people rushing through there. It can be hard as a pedestrian to sort of walk around that space and occupy those areas. It can be scary as a pedestrian to walk onto the bike path during peak hours as well. So we wanted to set the buildings back and provide a sense of spaciousness and generosity, and also a bit of safety to those areas around our buildings. And then one of our key moves that the village made early on was to centralize a lot of services. So one of those is a centralized car share hub. So all of our car parking happens underneath the south side of the building, so where my apartment was. Here underneath our building, if you go down to the basement level, there's a basement that connects all 3 buildings on the south side, and the cars feel like come in off of Hope Street. And so in the car share hub, there's 15 GoGet cars. 2 of them are electric vehicles. And that means that everyone has a membership to GoGet, and there's different vehicles for different uses, like cars with baby seats in them, cars with roof racks, moving vans, things like that. So depending on what you're doing on any given day, you can take the vehicle that's best for that use. And it was really important to us to allow Duckett Street to be pedestrianized and to be a space for people and dogs and landscape and commercial tenancies. So all of the cars come off of Hope Street and get into the village through the back. The bike parking area. So there's 450 bikes across the village. And again, there's a centralized bike parking area on the south side of the village that cuts through from the upfield bike path all the way through Skye House to the other side. And then looking at ways to create a thriving ground plane. So breaking our tenancies, Skye House is the exception. We have one big commercial tenancy in Skye House, and in other buildings in the village, they have smaller, more micro tenancies. So that was intentional to create a thriving ground plane. So looking at ways to create a thriving ground plane. So breaking our tenancies, Skye House is the exception. We have one big commercial tenancy in Skye House, and in other buildings in the village, they have smaller, more micro tenancies. So that was intentional to create a diversity of opportunity for commercial tenants, and we were careful to keep ours large because even though it was a bit of a bigger sales risk for us to find the right tenant, we really wanted the opportunity to find an anchor tenant for the village, and we really had our hearts set on hospitality. So we've got the grace trap and the commercial kitchen exhaust as well, because we want our tenancy at Skye House to help contribute nightlife to the village as well and make it a safer spot at night. And then the other tenancies you may have seen, good cycles are going in. There's a florist, Olive and Eve, there's a psychology studio, and then there's hospitality tenants coming in as well. And then looking at our opportunities for development, so the DDO 18, the Design Development Overlay, mandates a 12-meter street wall, so starting with that. And then this is what the Design Development Overlay looks like. If you look at the regulations, it's sort of this 45-degree setback, the one-to-one setback from the street wall, which isn't a particularly great design outcome, and it's also not a very rational construction outcome either, because all of the floor plans have to be different on every level. There's not a lot of construction efficiency. It's expensive to build this way, and it looks pretty wacky as well. And so we negotiated with council about opportunities to take some of this generosity that we created at ground level, where we're sacrificing development opportunity for ourselves, and put that back in at higher level to make more rational building that stacks better and is easier and more cost effective to build and looks better. And then another key move is the light courts. So big generous light courts in every one of the buildings at Nightingale Village. That creates amenity for our bedrooms. So most of the bedrooms in the village face in towards the light courts. And that so that you get the ferneries in the bottom provide transpiration and cooling to the bedrooms. And the inward aspect protects them acoustically from the train noise and tram noises. And then all of our living areas face north and south. And so that opens our living spaces out to the amenity, out to the views, and it also creates passive surveillance. So that means eyes on the street, which is important in creating community so that people feel safe at ground level. So people on their balconies can see what's happening on the street, and they can look out for you. One of the key moves in all Nightingale buildings is 20% affordable housing, and importantly, that's salt and peppered throughout the village, not in one building or not in one block of the building. So our community housing providers at the village are Women's Property Initiative and Housing Choices Australia. All of the buildings are fossil fuel free in operations, which means there's no gas. All of the buildings are powered by 100% certified green power, and they all have solar PV arrays on the roof. And all of the buildings, or all of the apartments rather, meet a minimum of 7.5 stars energy rating, net freeze energy rating, and the average at Skye House is 8.2. And then another key move for the village is appointing other award-winning architects to deliver design excellence in what is currently sort of like an average context of development, and sort of bring, it was important to us to break the site down into smaller scales where you can have different design language at different buildings to really create a sense of identity and community. And then of course delivering housing at cost, as Steve said. So then we engaged Openmark and Andy Fergus to help us with our urban design principles and planning. We talked a lot about the public realm of Duckett Street. These are some of Openmark's early sketches. This is Duckett Street here. This is the bike path. You can see kind of the mapping in the pedestrian connections of the muse, envisioning what that potential park could look like. And then this was before the Lucky Duck Park existed as well, but helping us map out some of those key areas. So importantly, we really wanted this street to be a place that could be activated by community, and we had already seen between the Commons and Nightingale 1 the potential where you have like-minded residents and commercial tenancies at ground floor It really creates an opportunity for that third space to exist where people do casually run into each other and interact and engage. It's a spot that can be occupied for various spaces at various times of year, different functions, markets, events. And I think with the commercial tenancies coming in, we'll start to see that developing on Duckett Street as well. So moving on to Skye House, the key moves. So setting our building back from the south to create that muse, the pedestrian thoroughfare here, and also the connection between the upfield bike path and the park. And then orienting all of our living areas to the north and south for solar aspect and views and amenity. And then also setting our building back from the east at high level to allow solar access to reach the potential future park. Responding to context. By that I guess we mean acoustic context in this scenario. So, putting all the bedrooms in towards the light courts where they're more protected from that. And then also responding to built context. So, one of the things that we really love about Brunswick is its kind of quirky built history. So waves of migration through the 40s and 50s and post-war sort of architectural influences. So a lot of sort of like classic and Roman details coming into the buildings and these sort of cute little arched motifs, which is part of what makes Brunswick's identity so unique. The industrial context, so in 1955, Brunswick was zoned industrial, which saw a lot of warehouses developing, which are now being redeveloped since zoning in 2009, changed it to commercial, and so now we can have residential and commercial and industrial in one zone at the moment. And then also the unspoken context of recognizing that all of this development happens on traditionally owned land, and that there's been a massive loss of biodiversity and landscape in all development, and wanting to make sure that we're mindful about doing what we can to contribute to rebuilding some of that biodiversity through our landscaping plans and facades. And then all of these sort of threads coming together to look somewhat like this early sketch of Skye House. What's in a Nightingale? Community and amenity. And so at Skye House, that looks like extending the public street into the building and pulling, that sort of brick paving, it feels sort of like a laneway, like a public or pedestrian laneway into the building, creating a space where residents, commercial tenants, like people who are visiting the commercial tenancy customers can engage and interact. So making sure there's a lot of transparency between the entry to the commercial tenancy and the restaurant, we'll say. And then making sure there's a lot of transparency in the glazing on the street as well, so that you get a lot of great sightlines from the street into what's going on in Skye House. I know at Nightingale Housing, I've spent a bit of time in there. The glazing, like we don't have a commercial tenant yet, but the glazing between Nightingale Housing and the residents is a really beautiful moment, and you do kind of have like a bit of a relationship with people coming and going from their houses and receiving their parcels for them and things like that. The lush light courts, that provides a lot of amenities to the bedrooms and the aspect and cooling through transpiration as well. The vegetated muse, which like the landscaping hasn't yet been established, but these two apartments on the ground floor are the only two apartments in Skye House that have a walk-up address, which is unique. The shared laundry, so all Nightingales have a shared laundry, so removing the laundry from the apartments to create, to give spaciousness back to the apartments and centralize the services to lower the embodied carbon, and also to create community, so to get to know your neighbors up on the roof while you're doing your laundry, and we've also got a little spot for bees here, which haven't yet gone in. And what's new in Skye House? So what's different in Skye House that we hadn't done before? So the first one is the bathhouse, which you may have seen on the roof, I imagine. So I guess in Nightingale 1, the baths were offered as a purchaser upgrade. But it's something that we find challenging because we recognize there's an inherited access issue or accessibility issue with apartments that have level changes in the bath, for residents that sell their apartments in the future, people who want to age in place, people with different abilities. So we were reluctant to put baths in private apartments again. But we do understand that some people want an occasional bath, and some people have small children for a period of time and they're living in an apartment and they want to be able to put kids in a bath. So we decided to make a shared bathhouse on the roof. So it's up to the residents how to manage the booking system. But basically, it sort of solves a problem in that it frees up the shower, city, stepless in all of the apartments, but it means that if you need access to a bath, you have one within your building. The guest house. So this is like a studio-style apartment. And the idea is that we have a lot of small apartments at Skye House, and the idea is that this is a way to flex up in space without needing a full-time second bedroom. So enabling people to live in a one-bedroom that occasionally have family come to stay with them, or a tile house. Sadly, on Skye House, due to the pandemic and increases, like the construction program really blew out and the project was struggling financially, we had to sell the guest house for additional revenue at Skye House. But it is an idea that we first developed for Skye House, and it has become a standard feature in Nightingale's moving forward, which is awesome. So this building has a guest house as well. So it ended up getting sold very late in the project to an angel investor in Sydney who rents it to Women's Property Initiative. And I guess when we did that, we gave people the option to exit their contracts as well, in case that was a space that they were really relying on, and one person with a tile house didn't choose to do that. So it was also the first tile houses in this building. So tile house is German for part of house, and it's a very small footprint apartment. So the tile houses at Skye House are 27 to 29 square meters. And the idea is that we wanted to design a space, so we recognize that Nightingale, we have all this great amenity and lots of sort of breakout spaces that are outside of your apartment, like the laundry, like the rooftop gardens, like the outdoor dining, the bathhouse, the storage cages. You do actually have a lot of access to space outside of your apartment, which means the apartment itself could be incredibly efficient. And we wanted, with housing affordability being one of the major tenants or priorities of Nightingale and of Bree's Skye House, we wanted to find a way to make our apartments as affordable as possible, which really meant making them as little as possible. And so we developed this concept of the tile house, which was an exploration in a well-designed, very small footprint apartment with great outlook and great amenity, additional access to spaces on the rooftop like the bathhouse, breakout spaces like the rooftop garden, and then you don't have to keep your bike in your apartment at Skye House. You don't have to keep I keep my surfboard in mine, but you don't have to. You can keep it in the storage cage and your camping gear and all that. Looking at like how small can we get these apartments and make them functional and beautiful. And we did sell our most affordable tile house at Skye House with $215,000. I guess one of the things we're really proud of about Skye House, we worked really hard on the apartment mix. I was mentioning this to someone on the tour, I can't remember. We worked really hard on our apartment mix. So we got apartments ranging from $215,000 to $1 million at Skye House, and from 27 square meters to 103 square meters. And then even the 2 bedrooms, for example, the one you went through at my apartment is 78 square meters, but we also have 2 bedrooms that are 64 square meters and are south facing, and those 2 apartments are very different price points. So we worked really hard to, there's not a lot of like typical apartments for this reason, but we worked really hard to make, meaningful houses in different parts of the market. So from the very affordable up to people who are downsizing or people who have more, access to housing. You've just been through Skye House, so these are some photos of the Skye House that were taken by Tom Ross. Just a few moments that capture the spirit of the building. And you know, I guess like in all sort of Breed's buildings and also in all Nightingale buildings, all the materials are FSC certified. So the materials in my apartment, the recycled hardwood floors. I think we're the only building in the village that has the recycled hardwood floors. So that was something that we really clung to with every last fingernail through COVID. And also actually was really hard to source. So I think moving forward, we will be moving away from that just because there's a scarcity in it. And so looking at carbon neutral engineered floors like the rest of the village has now, but I do really love them in my apartment. And then the FSC certified timber veneer, 100% stainless steel, which is, stainless steel, which is 100% recyclable, is what I want to say. And then, of course, all the exposed surfaces, the concrete soffits, the recycled content in the concrete, the recycled blonde bricks, and the balustrades, and the Class 1 Australian FSC certified timber decking. The entry to Skye House.